Okay. Good morning, Bore da. It's St. David's Day today, so as a Welsh woman, I have to obviously acknowledge that. So welcome. Welcome to those that are joining us by Facebook Live. I'm Trudy Morris. I'm the Europe Direct Information Centre Manager, and I'm also the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber is hosting the Information Centre, and we've been doing that for the last 12 months. And we're one of 12 information centres across the country. As an organisation, we're apolitical, so we don't get involved in the debate, but we're really here just to give out information about Europe, and obviously interacting with Europe. We connect with European citizens about their rights, and actually we've only got the contract now up until Brexit Day, which we presume is going to be the 29th of March, but obviously that's a bit up in the air. So we're doing this by a live webinar as well. And it's really just to help businesses understand the landscape around Brexit at the moment. So we'll endeavour to answer your questions, but as you can appreciate, there is a lot that we don't know. But we will endeavour, if we can't answer it today, we will endeavour to take your questions away and obviously answer those if we can as things become clearer. But there are things that we do know. But first of all, I'll just go through how it's all going to run today. So I'm delighted to be joined by our panel presenters. So on my right here immediately, I've got Sarah Maltman. She's the Local Export Partnership Programme Manager at the Inverness Chamber of Commerce. Next to her, we've got Martin Johnson, who's the Regional Head of International and Key Sectors at High. And then next to Martin, we have Ilona Warburton, and she's from Enterprise Europe Network. Next to her, we have Stephen Sheridan from Skills Development Scotland. And on the end there, last but not least, we have Ian Sinclair, our Area Manager for Caithness and Sutherland for Highlands and for High. So we're going to have some presentations from each speaker, and then we'll go into a Q&A session. What I would ask you to do, if you're in the audience, is you'll have a green card. And if you'd like to ask a question, if you can put your card up so that I can obviously facilitate that, because also we'll be taking questions from Facebook Live as well. And David at the back here will be letting us know when we get any questions through from that. So we obviously want to endeavour to answer those questions as well. And then we'll just do a roundup. There is an opportunity for one-to-ones afterwards. If you want to speak to any of the presenters, they will be around for probably an hour or 45 minutes, something like that. So if you do want that opportunity, please take it. So where are we now? Well, if you've been following the news, or if you've got Brexit fatigue as Jean-Claude Juncker has, then maybe you're not up to speed with what's happening. But as you know, the UK government couldn't get the withdrawal agreement agreed by Parliament, and since then it's just been absolute chaos. We've just been seeing toings and froings back to Brussels, and we are no clearer as to what's really happening. So what's coming up is that on the 12th of March, there's going to be a meaningful vote in Parliament on the Brexit deal, on the new Brexit deal that Theresa May is bringing back. And if there's still deadlock, then on the 13th, Parliament will vote on whether to let a no deal happen or not. And then on the 14th, there will be a vote on whether to extend Article 50. So if they vote that they don't want a no deal, then obviously they'll vote to whether to extend Article 50. So Article 50 is the piece of legislation that means that we will be exiting on the 29th of March, which, as you can appreciate, is not very far away. And there will be obviously a vote on that to see whether that be extended. But obviously that's obviously not in our Parliament's gift to extend that. That has to be agreed by the European Union as well. So we're still obviously in a landscape where it's very unclear. The UK government has produced a number of technical notices on the on the Gov UK website, which has gone into quite in-depth about what a no deal would look for different parts of the economy, whether it's to do with legislation, whether it's to do with trade, It's covering all sorts of things, but there are still things that are pretty unclear. And actually, one of the notices that came out this week said that 240,000 businesses in the UK trade with the EU as their only export market. And all those will need what we call an Economic Operator Registration and Identification Number, or a EORI. And I think some of our presenters are going to talk about that shortly. So in the event of a no deal, they'll need to register for one of those. And to date, just 40,000 have done so. And there is only actually capacity to do 11,000 of those a day. So it's going to take 18 days to actually register all those remaining businesses if they choose to do that. So that just shows you the complexity of what we've still got to face. So I'm going to stop speaking and I'm going to pass over to our presenters to go through their presentations, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So Sarah, please. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and I am the Local Export Partnership Programme Manager for the Highlands and Islands region. So I'll give you just a little background on me and what I do, and then I'll go into the Brexit topics. So the Local Export Partnership is led by Inverness Chamber of Commerce in partnership with a number of other Highland agencies, so Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Business Gateway, the Enterprise Europe Network, various local councils across the Highlands and Islands, as well as Caithness, Murray and Lochaber Chambers of Commerce. The programme aims to support small businesses in the Highlands and Islands who are looking to start exporting for the first time, or businesses who are already exporting but would like to access new markets. We offer a range of support and services covering a broad range of services, so bespoke export action planning, one-to-one advice and signposting based on the most relevant agency to deal with the technical inquiry, support with technical inquiries ourselves, and we can access the Global Chamber of Commerce network. We also offer mentoring support through our partnership with Global Scot Mentoring Service, which is a part of Scottish Enterprise, and it's a worldwide network of entrepreneurs and business leaders with connections with Scotland who are passionate about helping Scottish businesses to grow. And we also offer funding assistance. It's meant to be a sort of last resort funding for companies who wouldn't be able to attend an event without our funding assistance. So it's micro grants of up to £350 to cover the cost of travel and accommodation to an export related event or trade show, either in the UK or overseas. And it's to give you an example, we recently funded a company from the Isle of Jura who were looking to travel to Inverness for an international event from Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and it was going to be a 3-day round trip, and our funding covered the cost of the trip, which enabled her to go. And it's available through a one-page application through myself, and usually turned around in 24 to 48 hours. So that's just an overview of the programme, and so I'll just go into the topics that I'm going to discuss today. So there's obviously a number of factors that is playing on everybody's mind at the moment, and there's a lot of areas that are still in question. So today I'm going to talk about export documentation, customs declarations, rules of origin, EORI numbers, which Trudy already mentioned, AEO status, and transitional simplified procedures. So in terms of export documentation, I'll talk about what will happen if we leave the EU with a deal, and also what will happen if there's no deal agreed and it's a hard Brexit. So the British Chambers of Commerce network continue to work closely with HMRC and the Department for International Trade at the UK government. So they're revising a new format for both preference and non-preference export documents. Go back a bit. So in terms of preference documentation, Inverness Chamber of Commerce currently issue EUR1s and ATR certificates, and preference documentation is only required where the UK has specific trade agreements in place with individual countries or groups of countries. So that means that customers can import goods at a reduced rate of duty or with no duty at all, and If we leave the EU with no deal, the UK companies will no longer be able to apply these preference rules. Preference documents are completed to comply with HMRC rules, and then the Chambers of Commerce just face check the documents that are filled out correctly, and the goods need to meet the appropriate rules of origin that are outlined in Customs Notices 827 and 828. So if we leave the EU without a deal in place, HMRC have contingency plans in place to issue new revised documents immediately after the 29th of March, and Chambers will be supplied with the appropriate new documents. And in terms of non-preference certificates, we currently use European Community Certificates of Origin. If we leave with a deal, this will continue the same as it is at the moment, so until the end of the transition period, which is expected to be until the end of 2020. If we leave without a deal, these will change immediately and will be changed to United Kingdom Certificates of Origin. So British Chambers of Commerce and HMRC will supply the Chambers of Commerce with appropriate supplies of United Kingdom Certificates of Origin ready to issue immediately after the 29th of March. That will also change the way that goods are declared, the origin of the goods are declared on the back of the certificate. So at the moment, goods can originate from any EU member state when exporting to countries out with the EU. And that will change. I'll talk about rules of origin in a moment. There we go. So the rules of origin are obviously used to determine the national source of a product, and duties and quotas apply depending on the origin of the product. So current EU free trade agreements with third countries allow the goods to originate from any EU member state, and UK origin goods may no longer apply for these preference rules, which will impact UK companies who are part of a European supply chain. So if we leave with no deal in place, UK companies will have to meet a minimum threshold of 60% UK origin, and the companies will have to evidence that their goods meet that minimum threshold, and that applies the 60-40 rule. So if UK companies can't justify that their goods meet 60% UK origin, they will then have to pay the difference in duties at customs. So it's vitally important that companies are considering their supply chains at this moment and putting contingency plans in place in case it's a no deal. That is only if there's a no deal. So if there is a deal, we can continue to use European Community Certificates of Origin in the meantime. So customs declarations are official documents listing and giving details of goods being imported and exported. Declarations should be made by the exporter and the importer, and are quite often done on behalf of a company by the logistics company or freight forwarder. Customs declarations are currently made through an online system called Chief, although this will soon change to a new customs declaration service later on in 2019. And both systems will then work in parallel to cope with the expected increase in the declarations being made. If the UK leave the EU without a deal, the number of customs declarations being made is expected to increase from 155 million to 355 million, which can inevitably cause delays at customs, especially if the declarations are done incorrectly. This will most likely impact businesses who haven't done customs declarations before, and this is their first time doing this. It's also vitally important that you're using the correct commodity code for your product, because if you use the wrong code, that will result in delays or fines at customs. And if your freight forwarder is doing your customs declarations on your behalf, make sure that they're using the correct commodity code so that you don't face the fine or delay. So, as Trudy mentioned, an EORI number stands for Economic Operator Registration and Identification Number. HMRC are reminding businesses to register for an EORI number if you don't already have one, and that's vitally important that you do that now. An online application takes 10 minutes on HMRC's website, and it can take 3 days to process, but because of the huge backlog at HMRC, this can take a lot longer. The EORI number is crucial to continue trading with the EU. If we leave the EU without a deal, you'll need this number to continue trading after the 29th of March. So businesses are encouraged to apply for this now if you haven't already done so. And if you already have an ERA number but don't have a note of it, you can contact HMRC and they'll be able to help you identify that. So AEO status is a certified standard authorisation by Customs Administration in the European Union. The EU are actively encouraging organisations who export out with the EU to sign up to the initiative and become AEO registered. The AEO status is an internationally recognised mark of quality, and it demonstrates that you meet certain requirements in relation to safety and security, systems to manage commercial records, compliance and customs rules, financial solvency and practical standards of competence or professional qualifications. At the moment, within the Single Market and Customs Union, companies who have AEO status have a clear advantage when exporting, particularly to the United States or other large economies. Post-Brexit, AEO certification is expected to become even more desirable as an internationally recognised tool to keep cargo moving. Achieving AEO status can be time-consuming, so it can take 4 months to process the application, but it can offer a broad range of benefits. It's not for every company, it's much more appropriate for some rather than others, but it can offer a range of benefits, including increased transport security, reduced administration in the customs declarations, fewer delayed shipments. You're less likely to be selected for customs inspections, and if you are selected for an inspection, you get priority treatment and you can choose where the inspections will take place. And you get an advance notice of inspections if they're likely to take place. So to apply for AEO certification, you need an ERA number, and you must complete the application pack, which is then sent to HMRC. There's 2 application forms. The process takes 4 months and it can cost between £10,000 and £20,000. So that is why it's important to highlight it's not for every company. It's much more appropriate for some rather than others. But some companies might be under pressure from their supply chains to become AEO registered. The UK currently has 707 AEO registered companies, and 24% of them are freight forwarders. So if you use a freight forwarder, it's worthwhile checking whether your freight forwarder is AEO registered, and if they're not AEO registered, check what their contingency plans, if they've got the contingency plans in place in the event of a no deal. And so the last topic I'm going to talk about is transitional simplified procedures. So this is one of the temporary measures being put in place by HMRC in the event of a no-deal Brexit. And it reduces the amount of information you need to provide when doing customs declarations for importing, and it allows you to defer any duty for 3 months. And in the event of a no-deal, many companies will need to apply for the same procedures to EU trade as they would to trading to third countries. So transitional simplified procedures will allow you to defer duty for a 3-month period, and they will be reviewed in June. The procedures are much more beneficial for those who are importers rather than exporters, and if you're interested in registering for transitional simplified procedures, then you can do this on HMRC's website. And they are just my contact details. I'll be around for the Q&A afterwards, and I'll be around after the event. And I've got a couple of handouts for British Chambers of Commerce, Brexit, checklist and things like that. So I'll hand them out afterwards. But I'll pass on to Martin. So thank you very much. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Martin Johnson. I think I work for Highlands as Enterprise. For the purposes of today, simply put, I look after what HIE does round about international trade. I thought a very simple agenda for this morning in terms of what do we know, what do we, and particularly what do you, need to do, and then to start to sketch out some of the help that's available for you. So in terms of what do we know, when Trudy started to talk to the panel about putting on an event today on the 1st of March, well, that's great. That's brilliant timing, because by then we'll know what's happening and be able to talk with authority to businesses in the audience about what they should have done and everything. Now, there's a reason why I put a picture up there rather than words, because whatever I'd written at the beginning of this week would have changed fundamentally by the end of this week. And this week alone, we've gone from the Labour Party clarifying their position on a referendum. We've had significant concessions on the existing deal, and as Trudy said, we've now got clarity, if that's the word, on 3 votes towards the middle of March. But at the moment, other than Brexit means Brexit, we're not really very sure at all about the detail of this. So it remains fast-moving and uncertain. The politics of this are particularly hard to read, and that matters because that will have practical consequences for businesses in the audience today and across the United Kingdom. So at the moment, we are assuming that at 11 p.m, 4 weeks today, on Friday the 29th of March, the UK will leave the European Union. Since, well, slightly before Christmas last year, across the Scottish public sector, we took a prudent view that we will assume that we will leave, it will be a hard Brexit, that we will leave the current arrangements for trade, for imports, and we will crash, as it's called, to World Trade Organization detail. So my presentation is on that, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, because I think prudently that's what businesses need to be doing. And in terms of what that might mean in terms of a World Trade Organization scenario, one of the metaphors that I like to give is it's moving from the Premier League to the 4th Division. Yes, we're still playing football, but it's very, very different between those two things. And there's no way really to sweeten that pill. The consequences for business when we go to WTO terms will be much more significant. Sarah did an excellent job just then of explaining some of the procedures, the paperwork, the system, the complexities that will be added to businesses that is not there at the moment on the whole. The Scottish Government have done some economic scenarios that was published just last week. They're projecting a drop in Scottish GDP of round about 7%, a drop in exports of somewhere between 10 to 20%, unemployment that's currently around about 4% across Scotland. That would rise anywhere between 5.5% to 8%, and at that upper level of 8% unemployed, that'll be 100,000 people that will lose their jobs as a consequence of us leaving the EU without a deal. And also the anticipation is that Scotland and probably the UK will move into recession this year. So it is really serious. And as I said to some of my colleagues, I'm usually in front of businesses talking about the positive opportunities and what you need to do. This is not going to be one of those talks, I'm afraid. There are some silver linings, I will talk about those, but this is very much about this is what businesses need to do and why, in the context that it is very uncertain. Busy slide there, but basically what that says is, so HIE surveys businesses 3 times a year. The most recent one was undertaken over 1,000 businesses across the Highlands and Islands over the month of October, and that data is then gathered in and processed, and that's a 20-minute interview with over 1,000 businesses over October. And what that says, and this mirrors data that's more current from across the UK and across England, is that businesses, understandably, and I'll explain what I mean, are not prepared for Brexit. And understandably, because when you talk to businesses, they say, well, surely the politicians will sort this out. Surely we can't go into a hard Brexit because of all the things that I just said. So a lot of businesses, certainly in terms of October, are not prepared. But that is changing. One of the main things I'm talking about today, and I'm sure you will hear other speakers talk about it, is within Scotland, our main response is a website, so that's a one-to-many tool that we have, and it's prepared for Brexit. And we're, the uptake, the visitation to that, the going through it, the numbers were relatively low up until last month, and we've seen a week-on-week doubling of the number. So businesses are now, I think like all of us are saying, well, 4 weeks today, I really now need to, whether it happens or not, I now need to prepare my business. So we're seeing that. So the Prepare for Brexit website provides step-by-step guides for businesses to go through. It provides you with the ability to go through a checklist, to think about the things that are important to your business, and I'll touch on some of that, and Sarah has already touched on some of those as well. It's sector specific, because food and drink as a broad sector is different from oil and gas in terms of what a hard Brexit will mean, for example. And it provides links to others that can help you with specific issues. And it also allows you the ability to get in touch with advisors who can give you some human-to-human interaction and ask, or allow you to ask and have your questions answered. And it's kept up to date, so it changes regularly. So just to run through some of the things that my advice to businesses, that I would imagine is the panel's advice to businesses you need to do, is firstly, look at your customers and suppliers. For some businesses, this will be obvious because you're either importing or you're exporting. So understand, what will a hard Brexit mean in terms of the procedures, the tariffs for your imports? What will that mean in terms of your cost base? And if you're exporting, similarly, what will that mean in terms of tariffs and regulations? Talk to your customers, talk to your suppliers, understand what's happening there, what their attitude is, understand what's happening across your sector in terms of your competitors. So do your homework, speak to people that are important to your business in terms of your supply chain. And for some businesses, they might be saying, well, I neither import nor export. I'm all right, Jack. Well, are you? Where does your supplies come from? Where does your supplier get their supplies from? Your customer, where do they sell on to? The impact of Brexit will be across the economy of the United Kingdom. And whilst you as a business may not directly be neither importing nor exporting, your suppliers may well be importing and what's going to happen to them, and your customers may well be exporting and what's going to happen to them. So again, it's do your homework, look up and down your supply chains and see what that is. Another key thing that we're recommending is have a look at the tariffs. This is I provide the link here, and these slides will be provided both online and to guests in the room. And have a look at some of the tariffs. I mean, in terms of World Trade Organization tariffs, the average for agriculturally produced goods is 22%. For non-agricultural, it's 2%. So there's a big difference there. But now those are averages. So just to pull out some numbers that may resonate with guests in the room and people online. For beef, it's 59%. For butter, it's 66%. And this is for imports as well as exports. So if you're a baker, one of your major imports, one of your major raw materials is butter, you're going to see a 66% increase in terms of butter. And the UK is not self-sufficient in butter, for example. On average, across seafood for World Trade Organization, the average tariff is 13%. I had a look at this website and pulled out some specifics. So for haddock, it's 7.5% tariff. For cod, it's 18%. For salmon, it's 2%. For lamb, it's not a percentage. It's an amount of €8.5 per kilogram. For textiles, it's 8%. For lithium batteries that may resonate for this region, it's 4.7%. So some of these numbers, some of these additional costs that come on to businesses are significant. And you need to have a look and think about, what does that mean for my business? What does it mean for the prices that I've already got negotiated? What will my customers be expecting me to do when these tariffs come on? Now, there are two potentially silver linings in this, if I put on my rose-tinted glasses and look at it. One is that these tariffs apply to imports to the UK, so that will allow businesses the chance to look at import substitution, because overseas competitors, in terms of the UK market, will be facing some of these import duties, and that may mean that you now become much more cost competitive than other suppliers to customers or potential customers in the UK. And the other thing is, looking at what's already happened and what might happen, is the further devaluation of sterling. So in many cases, for many business, for many sectors, the devaluation of sterling for exporting will exceed the increase in tariffs. So it will be possible for businesses to be more competitive post-Brexit than they are pre-Brexit. Now, that said, that's just purely on a cost basis. There are, as Sarah took us through, all the regulation and procedures that businesses will need to understand and be able to deal with, and that adds time, complexity, and most fundamentally, it adds cost. And another point, just to make it obvious, that moving to a hard Brexit is not just about our interaction with Europe. Through our membership of Europe, the UK has something like 40 free trade agreements with 74 countries. All of that goes. So we will not enjoy the recently announced trade deal with Japan, for example. We will be trading on WTO terms with Japan and with 74 countries around the world that we currently have preferential trade agreements in place with through the EU. So what do you need to do? I'm the third person to say it to you, so it must be important. Register for an EORI. Why? Because it's a code, it's a reference that's unique to your business that you absolutely need for just about every single piece of paperwork or digital paperwork for importing or for exporting. If you haven't got that, you can't import and you can't export. And it's really, really important. The other thing you need to look at is in terms of the role of HMRC, and it's to do with the VAT. It's complicated, as VAT is, but simply put, you will now be having to pay VAT on imports. The current rules are, though, that that won't be at the point of entry. You will be allowed to use that as input VAT to your quarterly returns. So that's helpful. HMRC have done that to help businesses with their cash flow. And also, you'll have to, wherever country in the world you're now selling to, and that's every single country in Europe, their VAT arrangements you'll need to build in to your pricing and into your sales and into your paperwork model. And as Sarah said, rules of origin also matter now. So at least 60% of all your input prices need to come from within the UK. Otherwise, you'll have to start paying VAT on those individual components within that. Again, the declarations will now become broader, deeper, much more complicated than businesses have had the enjoyment of in the past. As I mentioned, there are sector-specific aspects with a hard Brexit, and there are many, all the industry bodies have geared up to provide advice and information to their members and to the sector. Much of this is freely available online, and if you're members, of course, you can talk to them. So things like Scotland Food and Drink, the Seafish Authority, the National Farmers Union, and so on and so forth. So where you're in industry, look to your industry body, look online, speak to the reps that you have, and talk to them about Brexit. Understand or help that, allow that to help your understanding of what it means for your business and your sector. A key aspect, and for the first few years since the referendum, this has been the #1 issue that business have presented, is about workforce, EU nationals, and what's going to happen to my existing workforce, and what will happen in terms of my ability to draw on a workforce from across Europe. Well, that's one of the fundamental aspects of Brexit, and is currently proposed then the ability for you as a business to attract talent in from overseas will be much reduced. The current proposals are, these are not agreed, is that there will be certain restrictions on low-level skills and lighter restrictions on high-level skills. And crudely put, the arbiter is whether someone earns more than 30,000, that's high-level skills, and relatively speaking, straightforward. And if they earn less than 30,000, much harder to get them in. In the context of our economy, in terms of the context of Scotland, of the Highlands and Islands, of Caithness, 30,000 is a decent wage. And for many businesses, many of your employees will be less than 30,000. So this change will fundamentally restrict your ability to draw on a workforce. And for many businesses across the region, across Scotland, they have enjoyed a workforce from Europe. And the UK government have put in place some rules and some procedures around about how people who are from Europe and are settled and working with their families in the United Kingdom can stay. So again, as an employer, the advice is talk to your workforce, Talk to people that are not from the United Kingdom. Make sure that you as the employer and they as the employee are aware of these rules and procedures, and make sure that you're aware of the help that's available to you and to them to look at the systems and procedure. And transport, well, Sarah kind of talked on it in terms of think about how you get your goods in and think about how you get your goods out. Who's doing that? Are they a freight forwarder? Have they got an EORI number? Have they got AEO status? If not, what are their plans for that? So again, talk to one of your major suppliers in terms of transport so that you understand that they've understood things and have addressed that appropriately. And the key thing there, that the double exclamation, there's a heck of a lot of technical paperwork that now will be associated with importing and exporting. And Sarah took us through quite a lot of that. So a few slides just to rattle through. What help is available? Well, Trudy and the team, Sarah and the team, the Chambers of Commerce within Scotland and the British Chamber of Commerce are an excellent source of advice and information and help. So one of the things is look at the websites, speak to Trudy and the team, speak to Sarah and the team, and you're drawing on a vast pool of knowledge and expertise to help you human to human as well as that's available digitally. The Institute of Export, a fantastic website. There's free advice there. There's also paid for advice there. These are sort of the recognised experts, the professionals when it comes to exporting. If you haven't, we, HIE, have a number of webinars by the Institute of Export on our website. The links will be on everybody else's website. Go listen to that webinar. It's more eloquent than what I'm doing in terms of talking to you about what the implications of a hard Brexit are. The UK government have a lot of information. Trudy talked about their technical notes. So again, there are different levels that you can go into in terms of understanding. But if you want to dive deep on this stuff, the deep stuff is there. If you want just a summary of it, there's a summary of it that's there. So look at the UK government website. And the one that I'm really recommending to Scottish-based businesses is go look at the Prepare for Scotland website, as I mentioned at the beginning of my slide. There are walkthroughs, there are talking heads, there are checklists, there are links, and it also allows you to engage with humans. And this simple model just takes you through. So the website allows you to do a self-assessment. That starts to identify for you things that you can get on with now by yourself. That's not rocket science. You can do that. There are things that are perhaps more technical or more uncertain. It allows you to come through to talk to someone about that. And it takes you into a system. A key point is that there's a number of organisations on this panel. There is no wrong door. Speak to me and it's about skills. I'll happily put you in touch with Stephen and help you do that. If it's something that the Chamber can do, I'll happily put you in touch with Sarah. If you speak to Sarah and it's something that HIE or SDI or whoever else can do that. Just speak to any one of us. We're here as a team. I may not be particularly there at that moment in time be able to help you, but I can reach out to Sarah, I can reach out to Stephen, I can reach out to many colleagues to help you. So there's no wrong door. So don't wonder who to speak to any of us. Then pretty much the last slide from me. So there is advice to help businesses with their international trade strategy and plan, given that the assumption is, and it's an assumption, that we're looking at a hard Brexit in 4 weeks today. I think every business should be looking at what's my strategy, what are the markets, what are the opportunities, what are the threats, what do I need to do about that? And there is advice there to help businesses look at that. And also if there's technical questions that you have round about doing international trade, whether it's importing or exporting, then there's the ability to have those technical questions answered. Within Scotland, the Scottish Government have made available through Scottish Development International a Prepare for Brexit as a consultancy grant that's 100% funded up to £4,000, and that enables you to draw on a third-party technical specialist to help you prepare for Brexit. That's an advice-led piece of funding support, by which I mean that we would expect the business to be able to talk about its strategy and its plan. If you can't, then the advisors that are around help businesses will get engaged with you first, and then you access and you put into context what the technical support is you're looking for. These other last two bullet points are from the UK government and through the HMRC, because as Sarah was talking to us about, of changes in procedures and increasing in complexity of electronic forms. There is both training to staff, funding available to train your staff, and also to buy in the hardware and the software. So there are training grants available from HMRC, and there are also IT grants available from HMRC. So I would draw your attention to that. Again, there's details of that on the Prepare for Brexit website and through other websites. So that is my slides. Many thanks for your time and attention. I am aware that what we're talking about here is not positive and cheery, but I think we'd rather be honest with businesses about what we think it is that you need to be doing than find we're into April and businesses said, well, if only I'd known. So thank you.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Ilona Warburton, and I'm a member of the Enterprise Europe Network team based in Inverness. I'm going to give a quick overview of who we are, what we do, and highlight some considerations that you might want to think about regarding Brexit in areas where the Enterprise Europe Network can help provide some information. And I will just make it clear that it's going to mirror quite a lot of what's already been said. So the Enterprise Europe Network is an EU-funded network. We're delivered in Scotland by Scottish Enterprise, and we've got a team of 3 based in Inverness. It's based in the Highland Council. And our aim is to help companies to innovate, grow internationally by making the most of opportunities that are available through collaborative partnerships. We're all about making connections in Europe and beyond. The extent of our network is very large. Every region of the EU is covered, and we're all networked together, and we share knowledge, we share contacts, we share information to help local companies. So I'll help companies here. We've got colleagues in France who are helping their colleagues in their area it might be wanting information from ourselves. Our main goal is to help companies make international partnerships. And one of the main tools that we have is our Enterprise Europe Network Partnership Database, where there's thousands of different opportunities from companies who are looking for different things. It could be commercial partnerships, looking for agents, looking for distributors for their goods. It could be for new suppliers to broaden their product range. It could be for manufacturing partners. So there's a number of different opportunities that are there. The profiles are developed jointly between companies and Enterprise Europe advisors. And companies can express interest, and we'll act as the intermediaries putting you together in touch and providing follow-up. We offer things like events, brokerage events, which are usually attached to international trade fairs, where there's pre-arranged one-to-one meetings scheduled in advance. And we use our colleagues for market information. They've got on-the-ground knowledge of companies, their business activity. They can help provide company lists, company statistics, and we do the same for our colleagues. So, for example, recently we had a Swedish company who was looking for a particular grain to make beer, and they were looking for potential sources here. So that's our international partnerships. The innovation and funding support. We are here to provide information on EU funding programmes, and we can help identify partners to apply for European funding, which leads to EU funding and Brexit. At the moment, we can say we continue to participate in all of the EU funded programmes while we remain a member. What will happen will depend on the agreement. If there is a transitional period, then we'll continue to take part in all of these EU programmes until the duration of the multi-annual framework programmes that we sit under, which is 2020. In the event of a no deal, we can say that we will be leaving the EU budget in March, which means that UK organisations no longer will receive funding. But the Chancellor did guarantee that any UK participants will be guaranteed to receive the funding until the end of the project. I think it's important to make clear that that is for the UK companies. If you're a leader of a consortium, for example, in an EU project, and it's your responsibility to distribute the funds, it's only the UK partner that is guaranteed. The UK government notices that have been already mentioned have got specific links for all the different types of European funding, so Horizon 2020, Erasmus+, and you can find further information there on how that might affect you. What we can do, though, is provide guidance on the application processes, eligibility. We also subscribe to a database called Grant Finder, so in the event if there's no funding, we can have a look at different routes of funding that might be available, and we're happy to do a search. We also provide international innovation service through partnering again. So that might be identifying solutions for challenges that you have. It might be from transporting frozen goods, and you're looking for a solution to do that. So you can use our partnership database. Our general inquiry service, I think that will remain important. We can provide information on EU legislation, standards such as CE marking. We're not legal experts, but we can provide current information and current guidance, and that's what we'll be looking to do in a case-by-case scenario after Brexit. Our general inquiry service does typically include things like VAT inquiries, it might be due diligence, and standards and labelling, which again is going to be important. So, Brexit, what next? I think Trudeau's already highlighted. The withdrawal agreement was rejected on the 15th of January, and another vote with the possible revised agreement by or on the 12th of March, which could lead to a possible extension. But I think we all have to bear in mind that that has to be agreed by all the 27 member states as well to allow that. So it's definitely an uncertain time for businesses, and it's difficult for businesses to plan when we're not sure what the outcome is going to be. As extremely high volume of notices that have been published, that's quite hard to keep on top of. However, I'd like to highlight, I'm going to be the fourth person to say this, but there was a note issued yesterday by the HMRC, which is published to encourage business owners to make sure that they are ready by considering at least 3 steps. So they are urging business owners to register for the Economic Operator Registration Identification Number. And at the moment, they've said that only 17% of businesses have registered for that. If there is a no deal, then UK businesses who have only ever traded within the EU won't have that number if they haven't already applied. So that is, I think, a definitely take-home message today. Their second consideration was, as Sarah's discussed, is the customs declarations. So how are you going to go forward with that? You might need to think that you want to use a customs agent. But I think Sarah's covered very well what customs declarations you might need to consider. And again, their third recommendation was to consider registering for the transitional simplified procedure. But I think there's a number of issues that businesses do need to consider. And again, I think Martin very clearly highlighted there the need for maintaining relationships with your suppliers. It's absolutely key. You might want to check your contract terms there. They need to be aware of the new customs procedures as well, because all the EU member states are going to look on us as a third partner. So are they ready as well? Compliance issues, and you might want to speak with your freight forwarders. And again, I think Sarah highlighted the advantage of perhaps checking to see whether your freight forwarders are authorised economic operators. There is a database of authorised economic operators, so you can check who's registered in that. In the UK, it's quite simple to use, and it's well worth doing. Being aware of the potential import tariffs, there's a good website, the European Union Market Access Database. You can check on that, see what the likely tariffs are going to be. It's well worth a look. I think some businesses may be concerned about standards going forward, such as product safety. A recent inquiry I had was for a manufacturer of toys who were needing to look at CE marking and how that might be applied. There's been guidance that has been issued, particularly if there is no deal. So goods that are already placed in the market before the 29th of March will be able to continue to circulate in the UK. Additionally, goods made and assessed against EU regulation requires must have the relevant marking, but that could be for a time-limited period. And then it will change to a UK mark. But UK notified bodies will lose their status as being notified bodies in the EU. So this means that after 29th of March, the results of conformity assessment carried out in the UK will no longer be recognised in the EU, so they'd have to be assessed by an EU market body. IP and trademarks. EU trademarks and registered community designs are intellectual property rights. They're granted by the EU Intellectual Property Office and they're governed by EU regulations. So again, if we leave March with no deal, the government have ensured that the property rights in all existing registered EU trademarks will continue to be protected and be enforceable in the UK by providing an equivalent trademark or design registered in the UK. Finance and taxation, again, we've kind of covered that. That's something that you will need to be aware of. VAT registered imports will be able to account for import VAT on their VAT returns rather than paying it when or soon after the goods arrived at the UK border. Need to consider all goods that are received in the UK as parcels will be liable for VAT. And I think exporters, you'll still be able to zero rate sales to EU customers, but you'll have no EU sales list complete, but you'll need to retain evidence that the products have left the UK. I think it's important to highlight as well that EU states will treat the UK as they do non-EU countries. And again, what we've looked at briefly already, but Stephen will speak further about, is just to be aware of your staff. If you have EU citizens who intend to stay, it should be applying for the EU settlement scheme, which will be open until the 31st of December 2020 if we leave without a deal. We've looked at various resources. There are a number of resources out there. They are really helpful. I think particularly the Prepare for Brexit is extremely useful. The UK government information, the no-deal notices are important to look at. And there is a tool there that you can go through with your own sector, which gives very specific notices for you to have a look at. The HMRC have produced a partnership pack, which again is sector specific and it takes you through different stages and it's well worth a look at. The EU sources as well, the European Commission have issued a number of Brexit preparedness notices. That covers things like travel, which is really good. And what they also have in that particular website is the different member states and how they're preparing. So the information on if you're sending goods to Belgium, for example, what the Belgium VAT rates and their custom declarations and things will be. And I touched on the market access database as well. These links will all be available afterwards. Sorry, my contact details. I just want to make clear we are here. We're happy to help where we can. If you want to speak to us, and I just wish everybody good luck.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Stephen Sheridan. I'm the Regional Skills Planning Manager for Skills Development Scotland. If you're not aware of SDS, we are the Scottish Government's national skills agency, and we are set up to support businesses and people across Scotland, supply them, meet their skills needs as well. So I've got a short presentation today, really just to quickly talk about the skills implications, and then just touch on the support that is available as well. And I think starting with a bit of kind of context, looking at the range of economic, labour market and policy issues that are currently affecting employers just now, we're already in a more challenging situation for employers to work in than previously, and Brexit will probably exacerbate this problem as well. Firstly, Scotland's got an ageing population with an ageing workforce, and certainly on the past 10 years for population growth, we've been relying on migration. We have a particular issue in the Highlands, as you'll be aware, about youth migration down to the central belt when people travel away for higher education or work and not come back as well. Employment is at its highest rate in 10 years in Scotland, which is great news, but equally for businesses it makes it more difficult to access new talent. Increased costs in labour in terms of new initiatives such as living wage, apprenticeship levy, pension auto-enrolments, etc. is another challenge for employers. The way the work's changed when you look at the kind of gig economy and zero hours contracts, etc. That's changed the nature of work for some people as well. And clearly some businesses are meeting the challenge about labour shortages by looking at automation as well. So taking these points into consideration, Brexit's yet another challenge that really we have to overcome together in Scotland. Martin touched on the implications of the no-deal Brexit, so I won't labour this. Certainly for Skills Development Scotland, our main impact is how we support Scotland's businesses around the workforce. But the Fraser Allender Institute suggested that over the next 10 years it could be up to 9% in terms of lower GDP. And as Martin mentioned as well, many other research has suggested that we're potentially entering into a recession if we have a no-deal Brexit. It's a busy slide, but it just really demonstrates, I think, our reliance in Scotland PLC on EU labour. So we've got 140,000 EU nationals working in Scotland, and you'll find while they're centrally located around Aberdeen, Edinburgh and Glasgow, with 50% of all the nationals working there, the sectors that are really important to us in the Highlands and Islands are the ones that are going to be adversely affected. So when you look at accommodation, food services, tourism, manufacturing, etc., these are sectors that are heavily relying on EU nationals. So in summary, what it really means for the labour market is a tighter labour market than you're already experiencing, and probably unintended consequences of kind of new skills and labour shortages. And the demographic challenges we have, as I said, particularly within the Highlands and Islands, with our young people leaving the area, and the effect that has when you're trying to attract talent, as well as migration, is going to be exacerbated by Brexit. So on a slightly more cheerier note, I think really just want to spend the rest of my presentation just talking about the support that's available. So Martin's touched on the Prepare for Brexit website, and it's a very much a Team Scotland approach. So it's been HIE, Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Government, Skills Development Scotland, and many other partners as well, really getting together to try and make it easy for employers to identify what support is available and suitable for them. We would love to be able to say, here are all the answers, but I think all businesses are different, as we've talked about the kind of complexity of it as well. So the Brexit self-assessment tool on the website is really important to identify the areas that are a priority for you and where the support should come from. I think the message of kind of no wrong doors is a really, really important one. We're all in this together, within the public and private sector, and really anybody can help with signposting to any other agency, whatever, if there is questions that we can't answer directly. So I think that's an important message to take away from today. By going through the assessment tool, it will identify hopefully the right people to speak to, and clearly it has other functions like keeping you up to date with news and resources and highlighting any events that are coming on, and the Chamber have this event on as other events as well, so it's certainly worth looking at the website. So considering after Brexit there's going to be greater competition for talent and it's going to be harder to recruit key staff, I think it's more relevant than ever that you consider how you're going to attract the right people to ensure that you're in the best position kind of going forward for your business. And we've touched on this in a number of ways. You can still continue to employ people from the EU 27 countries, and you can do so with no deal up until 31st of December. Businesses will still continue to attract people out with Europe, but we certainly feel that probably companies may look more at homegrown talent and try to develop their own pipeline of talent and invest in workforce development. So our main kind of support SDS can provide in terms of helping employers identify their needs is our skills for growth. So it's a fully funded skills diagnostic proposal that we can provide to employers from 5 to 250, and you get basically 2 days of consultancy from what used to be IIP Scotland, which is now called Remarkable, and from an SDS advisor as well. And that gives you a detailed kind of plan in terms of your current capability and how to move forward in terms of workforce development. It's quite a straightforward process. My contact details at the end of the slide, and I'll be here after the questions and answers as well. But the first stage would be for a SDS advisor to come and speak to you, put you in touch with the consultant who will do the full diagnostic and develop, after doing a range of kind of consultations with your staff and customers, an action plan and recommendations how you can take that forward. We have a range of kind of case studies on our website, and I can talk to you about that as well, about the business benefits people have seen, particularly around managing change and transition require potentially if you're accessing markets where it's going to be more difficult to get the right people and the right talent as well, and about how that supports your existing employees but also helps you increase performance. Another increasingly important tool I think that SDS now offer is apprenticeships, and certainly from my experience, apprenticeships aren't really what people would think they were traditionally. They now cover all sectors. For some sectors there's funding for all ages, and they go from low-level skill jobs right up to master degree qualifications as well. If people are interested in developing a pipeline, there's a new product called Foundation Apprenticeships, which is effectively kids doing the first year of an apprenticeship while they're still in school. So for employers who would take modern apprenticeships, that's obviously of great interest in terms of the young person will have done a year of their training while they're not getting paid by you. That lets you identify the kind of rising stars out there as well, and let the young people make an informed choice, so when they come into your workplace they have experience of the industry, they actually know what it's like in a world of work, and are far more rounded. Our modern apprenticeship programme has dramatically increased in the past 3 years, particularly in response to the introduction of the apprenticeship levy. So we now have 28,000 apprentices that started throughout Scotland last year. We have a target of 30,000 for 2021, and there's new frameworks happening almost every month just now, where employers are identifying their needs, and really we are having to respond to that. And these are coming from, again, from higher level ones, and coming from sectors like banking to niche opportunities, for example, like archaeology, etc. as well. So there's a real wide range there. I have some information I can provide at the end of today as well. And finally, graduate apprenticeships. There is now a new route for not only young people, but any of your existing workforce to go to potentially a master's level qualification while in employment. This is currently fully funded by Skills Development Scotland and offered by universities and UHI throughout Scotland as well. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to take a person into the business or upskill a person in your business to get the right skills for you. And it's a dramatically different model, which hopefully will work well for remote locations, in terms of there is far less off-the-job training in the university, and it's far more about structure and learning in the workplace that is then recognised by the university in terms of degree and master level qualifications as well. So in summary, not to labour the point, but we do feel that the challenges that businesses are facing will probably be exacerbated by Brexit, and really whether we have a deal or we don't have a deal, there is going to be challenges with the labour market going forward, and the best way is to start planning your workforce development and your talent pipeline for the future. And certainly from SDS and from the other agencies as well, there's a range of support out there that we're all really keen and willing to work with you. Okay, thank you, and I'll hopefully maybe speak to you after the event as well.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I think you'll all agree there was a lot of information there, good advice, and information of where you can find other help and assistance. Obviously, all the slides we will circulate after the event, and anybody watching live on Facebook, if you just drop us a note if you'd like those presentations, then we can obviously email those out as well. So we'll go into a Q&A now, and hopefully you've all got some burning questions that you want to ask the panel. But I'm just going to ask a quick question to you, Martin, because on one of your slides you said that help was available in terms of funding and consultancy support. I just want to clarify, is that just for high account managed businesses, or is that for any business?
That's available to any business in Scotland that qualifies. So what that means is they have to have a reason for be looking at preparing their business for Brexit. So it's a universally available funding for eligible businesses anywhere in Scotland, so whether you're account managed or not.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, any questions, please? Yep, David, you've got one from Facebook.
Yeah, thanks. We've got a question here from someone who has a business exporting seafood to the EU. Could the panel give some advice to them on what they should be doing to prepare for Brexit?
Who would like to answer that?
I can have a go at that. So one of the things I'd suggest to do is speak to Sarah, because there's a lot of practical administration and regulation and paperwork around about seafood to do with exporting to the EU, or indeed any country outside of the UK. So that's a very practical thing that they can do. The other thing you should do is look to the Prepare for Brexit website and go through the checklist and the diagnostics and use the links there, or if they already have them, to go to such as the Seafood Authority or to Scotland Food and Drink, where there will be more practical, detailed information on demand through the web, plus that industry bodies will give contact details for them to speak to.
So I'll just add to that. So we can obviously help in terms of documentation and paperwork. So feel free to drop me an email and we can help you with that and signpost you. And definitely go to the preparetobrexit.scot website, because that will take you through the checklist, which is specific to your business and your requirements. And we can... the council will also be able to help in terms of documentation. And I'll just add, we know that there's been recent increases in the prices of health certificates lately from various local authorities. And I'll just say that we have no intention at the moment to increase our export certificate prices for certificates of origin. So just important to highlight that point. So those prices will stay the same.
Yes, thanks for that, Sarah. The Highland Council did issue a press release a week or so ago saying that they were looking at their whole health certificate procedure and would hope to bring in some improvements to that and sliding scales, but they have no plans at the moment to increase any of those charges. But obviously Argyll and Bute Council were the ones that came out with a significant hike, which is all adding to, obviously, a cost burden to businesses. So that's not ideal. So that's a space to watch, I think. Questions? Keith? We'll just get you a microphone.
Yeah. You mentioned the £30,000 limit for skills. People being paid over that being relatively easy to employ and under that level more difficult. Is there any sense that the government might move on that definition? Because up here, 30,000 is really quite a well-paid job, as you said.
That's very much a political decision within Westminster, but I'm aware that lots of bodies are lobbying government to say, hang on, if we apply a 30,000 threshold around salaries, then that's going to fundamentally change for the worse our ability to recruit. So a lot of the care sector, for example, a lot of manufacturing, hospitality, food and drink. So for very significant industry sectors in the UK, whether they're based here in Caithness or they're based anywhere in Englandshire, that's still fundamental. So it's very political, but there is pressure on that. But I haven't. So it's still a recommendation rather than it's been settled.
More questions from the floor? Yep.
As my glass is always half full, would the devaluation of sterling not make the UK more attractive for tourism and the tourism sector? And this extra business help to offset the rising costs of butter and lamb?
So yes, I think so I do think if we look for silver linings to a hard Brexit, then those one of those, that is the devaluation of the pound, does mean that exporting is more competitive, and yes, it means that the UK is an even more attractive location for tourist visitors to come to, because their dollar, their yen, their euro will go that much further. So yes, absolutely, I think that will be. And I think for the tourism sector, that further devaluation is going to be great. I think where the tourism sector will probably suffer from is the makeup of its workforce, and in particular from EU nationals, and restricted abilities to have people come in for the longer term for that. But yep, you're absolutely right.
Noting that there's lots of predictions about what will happen in the case of a no deal, but you can always find another expert that will counter that, as in anything. And actually, the Bank of England, when their agent was up, was quite because I think nothing had dramatically changed in the last 2.5 years since the referendum in terms of some of their predictions. They kind of didn't seem to be overly worried, but obviously we don't know how that's going to play out. So I guess it's just one of these things. We can think that these things will happen, but what will happen is anybody's guess. But there is always silver linings, things that we don't expect. We can look back on past years and think about opportunities lost, but also opportunities gained that we maybe never saw. So I guess we don't want to be all doom and gloom, do we?
Well, I think as well with the immigration market as well, I mean, historically it has moved from developing nation to developing nations. When Spain was struggling, we got a lot of workers from that market. Their economy grew, so then it went to Eastern European. So there is a lot of doom and gloom, but I feel that historically it has moved around the world for that part, and it gives us different opportunities for that target market.
And I think, Ilona, you would agree that there's still opportunities in Europe that businesses can
Absolutely.
get involved in. It's obviously just a different landscape and how that might work, but there's still opportunities there.
I would agree with that, and I think it's also important to remember that business is done with people. People do business with people, so your connections and your relationships are vital, and they're going to continue.
This isn't a question, it's just a response to that point, and it's not trying to be half empty. But the problem we've got is that we don't know how we're going to trade with these people. We're contractors at the end of the day. We work on fixed price. We don't know, we can't fix a price, and it's going to really, really affect our business. And do you know this? It was a fantastic presentation from all of you, by the way, and expect emails, I think, will be the backdrop to this one. But, this should be taken to Westminster, and they should listen to businesses and understand how difficult it's going to be. Martin mentioned earlier most businesses fall into the category of import or export. Well, we've found ourselves in both markets at the moment. And I'm going to give you some examples of where we're finding ourselves as a business on fixed price contracts at the moment. We're finding an increase in price of steel at 7% and rising at the moment. Cabling, 16% from 3 months ago. 16%. We've got controls and software, 10% increase. We've got transport, shipping costs, around about anything from 22 to 25%. It's quotes we're getting from last July. It's crippling business, and people need to wake up to that very quickly. But the government isn't waking up to that fact. So we have real problems, and that's not trying to be half empty. That's the reality of where we are as a business today. And it's I find it really shambolic that we're in this situation and the government's put us in this situation. And today, on the 1st of March, I think Willie just pointed out it's the 1st of March, we missed that game this morning, we find that we don't know where we are. We've got contracts that we're trying to ship to Europe by the end of April, and we don't know how we're going to do that. And the other point on that is that we've got clients at the moment that's asking us how we're going to deal with Brexit because they don't know. And these are internationally based businesses. And if the likes of Siemens of this world don't know how we're going to trade with companies in Scotland, how on earth do little businesses, SMEs in the north of Scotland, know how we're going to trade with businesses in Europe? So, you know, that's not half empty, guys. That's reality of how we're trying to run a business in the Highlands. And it is just extraordinary. And it is going to have an effect on employment. It's going to have an effect on our turnover as a business. We're gasping here when we talk about that. We don't even know how we're going to deal with that. Willie, as the financial director, sliding down the chair here. You know, and our accountants aren't able to tell us. So maybe we're missing something as a business and not getting the right advice. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know how you're going to answer that one, Martin. But it was just a little bit of a brain dump, really. Thanks.
I'm glad you said that was an observation rather than a question.
Several observations. It'd be interesting I'd really like to hear how other businesses are being affected. Export is relatively new to us, but it's proving to be the wrong time to be getting into exporting. It transpires. Sorry.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? David, you have one from the...
Yeah, I have 2 more questions from Facebook here, so I'll read them both and then the panel can decide who wants to answer which. So our first one is on professional qualifications awarded in the UK and how those will be recognised across Europe after Brexit. And the second question is about access to seasonal labour from EU countries, again, after Brexit, and how that will work.
Okay, Stephen, would you like to, can you answer the qualification one?
I can't, actually. I would say generally be happy to speak to the person who's put the query in to check it. Again, traditionally there's always been a kind of a read over from European professional qualifications to UK and to Scottish, and there's credit frameworks and things that you can read across as well. I think it all depends on the professional qualification institutions. You'll have some worldwide professional institutions that will be better placed than others to recognise qualifications and their own qualifications as well. If I can find out any information more, we can certainly share it or put it on the website and put it through Trudy as well.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, the second question was to do with seasonal labour.
Yes, access to seasonal labour.
I'll have a go at that one. So I mentioned the proposed changes round about labour and that 30,000 salary being what's proposed. My understanding is that there is a short, so non-UK nationals can apply and come to the UK and work for up to 12 months. So I think that that's been proposed to deal with, particularly from the agricultural sector's requirements for relatively short-term seasonal workers. So I'm not an expert on that, but my understanding is that people can come to the UK, but for no more than 12 months. And that once they've been here for 12 months, they can't come back for a further 12 months. So that may help, particularly where we think of businesses that have traditionally enjoyed young people looking to travel, post-education, pre-starting a career. So that might allow opportunities for business still to enjoy that sort of labour.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? I think I'll just make an observation. We talked about grant funding earlier, and obviously a lot of companies are a recipient of grants in one way or another, whether that's EU. Quite often they're EU funded. We obviously have guarantees from the UK government that in the case of a no deal, they will obviously underwrite payments for UK companies. I guess what we don't know is what's going to replace that funding in the future. And I don't know, I don't know if the agencies, maybe Ian, any thoughts on that?
I don't think there is an answer to it yet. I think there are, and even this week, which is probably how quickly it's moving, we've heard both in Westminster and in Holyrood discussions on that topic. I know there is pressure coming to resolve it quickly, but we're not there yet, unfortunately.
Okay, so do we know if is HIE getting involved in these conversations with government?
Well, I think both Scottish government and UK government are involved in those discussions, and I think I think we've heard publicly about shared prosperity fund as a potential replacement for EU funding. We don't know the detail of that yet, so we're waiting to find out.
Yeah. So another issue. Martin, do you want to add something?
I was just going to add to that. I think that there's reasonable clarity on things up to the next UK general election, and then I think that will form part of the political discussion at the next UK general election, assuming it's on a 5-year timescale. So I think for those EU programmes that are available, the UK government is committed to continue those up to, I'll look to Iona to maybe nod, 2022. Thereafter, it's unknown. I mean, there is no, other than UK producers themselves, there is no other access. We will not have access to EU funds, it's as simple as that. So it will fall to the UK Treasury to provide funds for activities that have been funded by European sources. And then the ability and desirability of that is very political across the political parties, across devolved and non-devolved administrations.
Yeah, so a lot of chaos still to come, I think, in that respect. Any more questions before we close up this session then? No burning questions? No. That we can answer anyway. David, anything through Facebook? No. Right, okay. Well, there is opportunity for those in the room if you want to have a one-to-one with any of the panel presenters. And as I say, if you do want the presentations, we'll obviously circulate them to the people that have attended in person. But if anybody wants that through Facebook Live, then please drop us an email and we'll get that sorted out. So I'd like to thank our panel presenters. Really great information there that you gave us. Lots of helpful advice. Obviously, we can't answer all the questions, but I think it's been really useful. And just to understand what's still available and what businesses should be doing. So really appreciate you all coming up from the south for that. I think everybody will agree it's been useful. I hope it has been useful for both you watching live, but also for you in the room. We are all here. We're not disappearing. So, you have the Chamber's contact details, and obviously we'll circulate the other panel presenters' details as well. I'm sure there'll be many, many more questions coming up that you'll want answers to or you'll want help. So please get in touch because that's what we're here for. And we'll wait to see what the next instalment of Brexit looks like in these coming days. Yeah, it could be anything, couldn't it? So thank you very much. There is still breakfast available, and as I say, use the opportunity to speak to any of us. So thank you very much.